Yeah, hello and welcome to this video, round 11 of Tata Steel 2013. We are nearing the finish line, just including this round, 3 rounds to go. I'm going to start with the game Kayin against Zokolov and then continue from there. Yeah, Kayin played e4 as usual. I think my sound is a tad too loud. Okay, played e4 as usual, and Zokolov sticks to his 1e5. He's always playing 1e5, but he's mixing his systems against the Rui Lopez. Here he decides to go again for this line, which he has played before with zero success in this tournament, already losing to Carlsen and I think it was Caruana. This Archangelsk variation or Archangel variation. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think if you lose 2 games with one line, you should simply switch to something else. He made a draw against Anand with the Schliemann Gambit or Jenisch Gambit, and he can play all kinds of offbeat lines in the Rui. And I don't know why play this stuff again with which you have lost 2 times. Admittedly, he wasn't so bad in those games, but still. Alright, d3 again, as in those 2 games before. Bishop c5, knight c3. Yeah, this is not so common in the Rui Lopez. Very often white plays knight d2, but knight e2 has its points. It can sometimes go to d5, or can switch to g3 via e2. This is an idea that sometimes is very helpful, and also it supports those pins or makes those pins more problematic. We see what happens. d6, a3, because black was threatening knight a5, grabbing this bishop. So a3 secures this square on a2. And now black played h6 because bishop g5 was a bit of an annoying move. Bishop g5 and knight d5. So this is why black played h6. Yeah, I think around here certainly black must be okay. It's not much happening really. And bishop c8. Yeah, we see that he is regrouping this bishop, which as mentioned more than once during this tournament, this bishop's on b7 in the Rui against this pawn chain isn't so well, so he's regrouping it to this diagonal. Knight g3, bishop b6. Yeah, quite normal. Probably intending to play with the c pawn at a later stage. c3. Yeah, and here maybe black should consider, I mean it's not a brilliant move, but maybe you should consider to actually take before white plays d4. I think I would prefer that, but it's not clear cut that it is better. The idea would be taking and then play bishop e6, trying to exchange a couple of pieces and relieve the pressure. Maybe this is a better try to equalize. If white doesn't agree to the exchange on e6, play something like this, then black can even think about d5. And he's got more space than in the game. I'm not sure if it is so great, but look at the game. He didn't take and allowed this e4 this d4 move. And white now has got a full center, and I'm always not so sure if this piece is really so great on b6. Black is still probably okay, but I would have preferred, I think, to take. One important tactical point here is, of course, if black would decide to grab on e4, then there's this important trick, which is very common in the Spanish opening. The defense of the e4 pawn with this nice trick. Sometimes there's also this move. I think it's not so good here, but yeah, because of the funny reply rook g4, and queen takes c6 gets answered by bishop b7, and black actually gets a super dangerous attack, probably winning attack. But bishop d5 is the problem. Okay, he didn't take, of course, but played bishop g4, trying to increase the pressure on the center. And yeah, white just moves the queen away and now threatens to move the knight, and then this bishop would be very stupid on g4. So if black would play some nothing move, I'm not quite sure what nothing move black could play really. Let's say this. I know it is stupid, but okay. Then white can consider to move this knight away, and then this bishop is yeah, in thin air. It can only retreat to d7 at a later stage. Maybe black can play d5 here, but okay, rook a8 is a stupid move anyway. But what I'm talking about is this bishop. It needs to serve a purpose here, and if white has got time, then he will move this knight away. Maybe not instantly, but in the next couple of moves, and then this piece has no function on g4. This is probably why he took on f3, but this leads to a strengthening of white's center, and in fact, after knight e7, and these moves, white has got a really big center. Black also couldn't really prevent f4. If he would play knight to g6, controlling f4 on the f4 square, then white has got knight to f5 coming, and this is really something you don't want to see. This knight on this post, and very, very dangerous potentially. It's also not easy to get rid of. If black would play knight e7, for example, then white can
Check.
actually even take here. Just have a look.
Check.
And the next sacrifice with a very strong attack for white. It's probably winning even. Black would take.
Check.
Get this check. And it's over. Queen g7. Knight g6. There's this simple move, and black gets destroyed. Yeah, so f4 wasn't to be avoided, and now white has a strong center. It's maybe still tactically feasible, but I don't like it. I mean, I think I would much prefer to be white in this position. Yeah, Zokolov tries to get some play against the king, but it's really not materializing. Yeah, here, curiously enough, the computer still likes black's position. I'm not sure. Really, I don't like it at all. I must admit that. What Houdini, for example, wants to play is this, and with an okay evaluation. But still, I don't think that this is so great. I mean, let's say rook g1, for example. Let's say rook g1. I didn't analyze it so much deeper, but isn't this looking dangerous? I don't really think that black can hope for much in this position. Yeah, it's probably better than the game, but this exchanging on d4 and then c5. In the game he took on f4, and look, now initiated this play, but here white doesn't have this double pawns anymore, so I think this pawn structure is much better in comparison. And yeah, white uses his rooks, rook f2 and possibly rook g1 or rook a to f1 according to circumstances. Yeah, c4 is a move. This basically admits that you're on the wrong track here, giving white a completely solid center that cannot be in any way pressurized. I think after this black is almost lost. I don't think that you can save this. It's too much. there's those things on the king, the g file, knight f5, and the worst is that the pawns start to roll. If you look at the game, bishop to d8, white exchanged, and now he got this bishop back into play, and this bishop is of course very strong piece. On b1 it covers e4 so that you can play the f4 advance, and yeah, and now the problem is f4, f5, and black has absolutely no antidote against this. Rook doesn't have either f4, f5, and in fact after f5, queen g2, this is hanging. Yeah, in this position there's the threat bishop to d1, and yeah, trapping the queen. You cannot move the knight because of
checkmate.
Exactly, and so bishop d1 is simply deadly. Black has no way to save the material here. If he would play, let's say, bishop to e7, bishop d1, knight h4, rook f3, and then you have absolutely nothing against rook to h3 under the right circumstances, or just rook to g3, and this is simply too much under the g file. So pretty much like a one-way street victory for Kayin. And Zokolov has lost so many games in a row now. I started to lost count. I think he made this draw against Vichy, but then lost all his games. A terrible shape. And but I'm not sure. I mean, why play this opening again, with which you have made no points? And he can play all kinds of stuff, at least surprising kayaking a bit and not repeating the variation. I don't know. I think if you're in bad shape, you simply have a hard time making good decisions even before the game. All right, so the next game is let's pick Hou Yifan against Anand. So the tournament underdog from China against, I readjust the board a little bit, from China against the world champion. But Hou Yifan really, I think that she really got into this tournament quite nicely by now. She lost quite a couple of games at the beginning, and not in too great fashion. I mean, sometimes making really weird decisions, but she won 2 games by now, and even has some positive ELO result. She won a couple of points, so I guess she can be satisfied up to now. Okay, let's see. e4, she always plays e4, and Vichy goes for the knight off, and bishop g5, which is the sharpest move, and maybe the main line again after a couple of years. Really a long time where this move was out of fashion, but it is back. And knight bd7, yeah, this pretty much signals that Anand wants to win this game, and at a very early stage. The knight off itself, well, he plays this in all kinds of situations, but e6, for example, f4, queen to b6, which is what he usually does play. The problem with this line is that there's a ton of lines, very forcing lines, in which black can only draw the game. White, in a way, just needs to learn and know one specific line or 2 specific lines, and then can very, very reliably draw, or black must risk too much. So this is his usual choice if a draw isn't too terrible. But here knight bd7 instantly avoids any direct draws. Queen e2, yeah, this is pretty unusual setup with the queen blocking the bishop. It's far more commonplace to play f4 directly, f4 and queen f3, but queen e2 has its points. The idea is, let's have a look what happens. Black played a6 and g6. Interesting setup, and quite unusual looking. E6 would be normal. But okay, why not try to fianchetto this? And one point of the queen on e2 is that it is opposite black's king. We see what might happen. f4. Yeah, after f4 here, white of course intends to play e5. So if black would play bishop g7, for example, then you need to reckon with d5 already. Something like this. Probably this was too early here with e5 hanging, but it's quite dangerous. The knight is offside, and I don't think that black really wants to go into this. He played just e5, directly putting a foothold in the center. But it's a strange mix of those moves and then e5, I must admit. Okay, white took, and now castled long, and this is a typical point of this queen e2 move. If black would grab the knight now, then e5 is yeah, deathly already, I guess. Threatening e takes f6 with yeah, devastating attack along the e file. Black yeah, simply has no good move here. Cannot take the knight, and Vichy just played bishop e7. So this g6 move was now looks a bit superfluous, but of course it prevents knight to f5 in this concrete position. Okay, white now needs to react to the knight hanging. Queen c7 and queen c4, which is interesting and probably a good decision. Black now needs to retreat the queen. Played queen to b8. I think black couldn't really take here. This gives white too much development. You can also look at rook f1 later and some play along the f file. I'm not sure. I think this might lead to some white advantage. Simply a matter of development advantage. From a structure point of view, black isn't too bad, but don't have the pieces coordinated yet, and you still have the king in the center, which means the rooks are not connected. So this was the best probably. Knight to d5, b5, queen c6, and knight takes d5. Yeah, a couple of relatively forcing moves. Also queen b7 was probably forcing or forced because now it is pinned here, the knight, and white threatens moves like knight rook takes e5, and this is very hairy for black. If he would take now, white simply recaptures and also has this kind of ideas now. Knight takes g6. Amongst others, it's just rook takes e5 is a problem. If black's queen would move, rook takes e5 wins. And what should black play? So what he did is perfectly alright. Queen b7, queen c3 retreating, and f6, which looks really ugly at first sight, but if you look at it with some time, and then you'll appreciate that this is not really weakness. It looks very weak, this g6 pawn, and the whole kind of structure looks weak here. Advancing pawns just one square on neighboring squares is often strange. Like a3, b3, c3. It's always quite airy for the king. It's a bit insecure, but it doesn't really matter in this position because black gets time on the rook and gets a proper setup. Bishop f2 and knight b6. This was the idea, gaining a tempo on the rook. Rook retreated, and knight a4, attacking the queen. Here the most natural looking move is probably bishop to e6, but then knight takes e5 is a move that might irritate black. Something like this. And white, yeah, it looks dangerous for black. I didn't really would like to play that. Yeah, black played knight a4 first, attacking the queen, and queen c6, which prepares bishop to e6 and forces white's next move. Bishop e6 would be really problematic for white, so she needed to play queen d5, basically getting rid of the queen. But this now leads to a fine position for black, and I'm not 100% sure where white should improve the play before, because it is relatively clear that this position is really better for black. It's not quite clear how much, at least it's not clear to me after a brief analysis, but it's clear that black is the one who's better, simply because one fact: this pawn on d5, it is a pass pawn, and very often pass pawn means you have got an advantage. But here the problem is that this pawn is largely unsupported. It's not covered by another pawn. If you have c4, for example, would cover the pawn, and it can be attacked in the long run. If you look at the game continuation, she played bishop g3. I thought that bishop takes c5, which was more natural, but okay, maybe it was better to take on c5. I'm not quite sure what this bishop is doing. Okay, Anand, knight b6, attacking this pawn and preventing c4. This is important, that white doesn't get to cover this pawn. She played bishop to d3, attacking g6, and now a strong reply, bishop to f4, f5. It is absolutely not important that this pawns might get doubled on the f-file. This is even an advantage because you control so many important central squares. Look at those pawns here. They control the whole center. And now we see the isolated state of this pawn. Just rook to d8 and it's gone. Or long castles, it's the same. The d5 pawn is gone.
Check.
Yeah, so let's take stock. Black has an extra pawn, a nicely centralized knight, and good influence on the center. Okay, this is potentially a bit shaky, those pawns, but it's not apparent how white should win one of them. She can attack the pawn on f5, but hard to win it.
Check.
Yeah, regrouping, attacking also b2, and now black grabbed on g3. If black would take on b2, then rook d6 gives white some counterplay, attacking those two pawns. I think it's a bit unnecessary to give white this activity. He took here, and yeah, it's a little kind of trap. Take on g3, and now white played b3, and this allows a really nice trick, which which really should win for black, and this is the move rook d8. Simply ignoring this knight is hanging. The problem is, if white would take the knight, then this exchange and taking on h2 gives black a new queen, and the same applies, of course, if white would take first, then take here, and it's still a new queen. And this means, because look at the position. I think I somehow overwrote the moves here. Bear with me, I need to reload this.
Check. Check.
Yeah, rook d8, and this means that the rook exchange is almost unavoidable, as there's no other move. If white would, let's say, move away the rook, the only way to avoid the exchange, then black's got rook d2 and rook h2 coming, and winning easily. Okay, so you need to exchange, no big choice, and then retake on g3, 96. Yeah, and now we got a pure knight endgame, which should be totally winning for black, simply because he's got an extra pawn, and it's very rare that knight endings with extra pawns are not winning. It is a bit comparable to pawn endings. In fact, this is Botvinnik's famous rule that knight endgames are almost identical to, in evaluation, to king and pawn endgames. So he gave the advice to just think of the position without the knights and evaluate this position. And if you think that the extra pawn or the position, whatever, is winning for one side, then it's very likely that this is also the case with the knights. And in this case here, both endgames are winning. Let's see what happened. Yeah, this is fine. And now black, of course, needs to activate the king, which he did, of course. b4. Yeah, and now we come to the important point of this game. Look at the clock. Anand's got a huge time advantage. Hou Yifan always was in time trouble in this game. Even early on she had used much more time, and now Anand played knight to f5, spending 30 seconds according to this clock. And in fact, knight f5 is a really big mistake that spoils the whole advantage. Black could win rather easily, and I think he would win it also in his sleep. Yeah, just needs to sit tight, think 2 minutes or something, and then play it correctly. So what's winning is a simple move like h5, a4, king d5, just continuing to strengthen the position without exchanging the knights. Of course, as I just explained, very often the the king and pawn endgame with the extra pawn is winning, almost always, but almost is not good enough in chess. You need to look at each position on its own, and this here is completely over, because white cannot even move something decent here. We move the knight, then knight f5 picks up the g3 pawn, and you're in Zugzwang here. King e3, king c4 is easy, as is king c3, knight e4, picking up the pawn. So h5 was a super simple win, and I guess he simply did some kind of silly miscalculation in the king and pawn endgame, because of course black is attacking g3, so white, if she would move the knight, then g3 is just gone. And I'm not quite sure what miscalculation it was, but look what happens. Knight f5 takes a4, and this is of course the counterplay. If black now would simply ignore all this, then of course he would simply lose, because white is quicker, so you cannot just go here or attack this pawn, then simply b5 is winning. Oh, it's not winning. Oh, I need to. Oh, this is curious. Because of the counterplay, of course. Yeah, white needs to move the king first. I'm sorry. I analyzed this before, and I made some notes, of course, and I got confused. The problem is, if you play b5, then black can go here. This is important, and then gain a tempo with this check. So you can actually draw this as black. And what white needs to do is, after king g4, needs to first take away the square and stop the e-pawn. and then you can let your own pawn go forward. So in the game, he played king to e6, attending to the pawn, but then g4, important, stopping 2 pawns. And now we already see what the problem is. In this kind of position, the king and this pawn really they do a good job of stopping these pawns. It's not easy for black to advance. King d5 and just king c3. And how do you make progress now? It's really curious. Black would advance again, then white can play b5, and of course something like this might happen. And now black doesn't really have anything else than e4, and this will end in a total draw. And white is quick enough. So it's a curious case of a king and pawn endgame with an extra pawn that is not winning, and this is due to white's counterplay and black's relatively unlucky position of this pawn against those 2 pawns. So it's basically that this single pawn on g4 stops 2 black pawns, and so the extra pawn isn't felt so much. The problem was really that in this position here, black needed to go back and allow g4, and this is why h5 is essential before you play the knight exchange. Alright, so in the game I had it almost king e4, king c2. Yeah, this is also a draw, and we simply have a couple of more moves, and now a simple line that is similar to the one I shown. And now Vichy offered a draw. Yeah, he must have been certainly very disappointed to just spoil this game with the really easy blunder for his class. Very easy blunder, knight f5. He simply played too quickly. It happens if you think, yeah, I know this too well. I mean, it happens to me also. You think, okay, why isn't the opponent not resigning? Isn't this completely winning? And then you play a quick move and really rather would like to go home or have whatever, have the game finished, and the opponent simply doesn't resign, but even can draw after you make a silly move that was played too quickly. So a draw for the Chinese player here. Very nice. Drawing the world champion, but of course very lucky. I mean, this happens really rarely to Anand, that he spoiled such a big winning advantage. Okay, so the next game, let's have a look at let's pick Nakamura against Aronian. At least then I don't forget Nakamura's game, as it happened to me before. Okay, Nakamura playing d4, and we got a Slav. And yeah, Aronian is playing this a6 line, which was employed by the world champion in the match against Gelfand last year. And Gelfand didn't really get much against this move. He won one game, Gelfand, and this was with c5. And this is also what Nakamura is playing here now. Knight b to d7, knight a4, and this has been played before. And it doesn't look too attractive for black at first, but the idea is to go c5 next move, and then black would free his position quite a bit. Nakamura now played queen to c2. In fact, the main move in this position by far is knight e5, after which black normally goes c5, and we get this kind of endgame where white has got the bishop pair, but black's got quite good good piece placement. Knight to e4 is a possibility, and he's got some play along the B and C file. Black is a bit better developed in a way for the bishop pair. But Nakamura played queen to c2 back, and I'm not sure if this is really an improvement. This whole line doesn't seem to be too great for white. I mean, not that it is bad, but it doesn't seem to promise much really. Okay, Aronian prepares c5, rook c1, preventing this, and rook b8. Yeah, and now Nakamura played an interesting move, which surprised me. He just gave away the b2 pawn. If white would cover the pawn, let's say with b3 to analyze the concrete line, then black has got the possibility of playing bishop a3, attacking the rook, and if it moves away, then black gets in this important move c6, c5. If black manages to play c5 without getting punished, then he certainly is alright. So Nakamura sacrificed his pawn and castled, and I think it is probably good enough to to have enough counterplay to equalize, but it's not a pawn sacrifice that really threatens to refute black's setup. Aronian played bishop d6. He also could have considered to just take on c2. Maybe it was stronger, but it's not a huge difference. So we've got the exchange now, and black playing c5. As mentioned, this is the key advance that you need to get in, and this basically forces what's happening next. Black is threatening to take or to play c4. C4 is of course the much bigger issue. He took on d7, takes, and again this c4 move, and Nakamura now took on a6, which is really a bit of a risky move. He also could have played just taking on c5, knight takes, and the bishop retreats, and okay, it's a pawn down, but there's some activity. He's got chances to put a bit of pressure against the c5 knight, and if it should move, then a6 is hanging. Yeah, it's not too great for white. The thing is, in the game he took, getting the material back, the pawn back, but black got this pawn now, and this is a bit of an offside piece. Okay, you see that with this setup here, with the possibility to get it to b5, white stabilizes this piece, but I think black is the one to try in this position with this passed pawn. e4, the move here, is an interesting attempt to activate this bishop. It was really a bad piece, and now we've got bishop f4 coming. Of course, black shouldn't take on e4, as this would really help white. The protected passed pawn now is away. So knight to e8, which is interesting. He wants to go to d6, and therefore still keeping some pressure on e4, but also protecting the c4 pawn once again, and preventing bishop to b5, or not preventing it, but then having the opportunity to capture it. Yeah. Preparing knight to d6, and here we go. Yeah, rook b1, logical, attacking this piece, and bishop to a5. Yeah, this bishop might one day be used on b6 to put pressure on d4. Yeah, here king f1, f6, yeah, a good strengthening move, controlling e5. So both sides improve the position a bit. c3. Yeah, and now it gets really critical. c3 just sharpens up the position a lot, and now white needs to play precise moves, and in fact he fails instantly here. What he should do and must do really is rook to d3. The point is it's simply the only move that you can play. He played in the game rook to e2, and this is met by a very strong response. If you have some time on your hands, then stop the video and look for yourself, treat it as a puzzle. What should black play now? I'll be quiet for a couple of seconds so you have time to stop it. Yeah, black has a very strong move here with e5. And the point is, yeah, white really doesn't have much choice. He took on e5. If white would retreat the bishop, the only alternative, then black simply can take here. And won a pawn now with the c3 pawn being on the board, and this is just a terrible position. Probably it's straight lost for white. So he took in the game, and now black's idea: knight takes b5, a takes b5, and d4. This was the important point that you needed to see beforehand with e5. Rook d1. Yeah, and here a quite curious moment, but not. First he took. This is alright, and this has got rook b1 as an idea. So if white would take here, this is what I'm talking about, then there's rook b1, and simply no move. If white would exchange,
check,
then those pawns really decide very quickly. The idea simply of e5 was to fight for some, so just get those two connected pawns on the road. So what I'm talking about is rook c2. It was necessary simply to have rook c1 on rook b1, and here it's an interesting moment. Aronian very surprisingly played d3 and quickly. I was really surprised by this, because I'm not 100% sure that this move really wins tactically. And he had a very simple alternative, of course, just taking on e5, which leaves black with an extra pawn, but you've got those pawns, and white needs to blockade the pawns with king and rook, so very bad blockading pieces. I mean, this should be technically winning in some way. It's not like a quick win, but I think he probably miscalculated with d3 somehow. Look at what happened. He played d3, and this looks really weird to just throw in the pawn. White takes.
Check.
Check. And now, in fact, Nakamura played bishop to c1. He had 11 minutes left, but the only move that was still playable was king f2. And after this, it's not super clear cut that black is really winning. Black has a distinct advantage, but it's not so clear if it is an easy win. Let's say rook b2, rook e2, and how exactly do you make progress now? If black would play c2, the problem is there's no real threat. I still control this square, and after bishop c1, something like this. White still hangs on. It's not clear that black is winning. King f2 was maybe underestimated by Aronian, but it was the case of mutual oversights, as Nakamura played bishop to c1, and this in fact isn't playable at all because of this very strong move. And what should white do now? Cannot take on b2, and you cannot really do something else than what he did in the game. This is sacrificing the exchange, but the problem is, after this, it's not just an exchange. This pin is the big issue. This bishop is almost lost. Here black had more than one good move. He played rook d2. The alternative was the funny move rook to a1 with this idea, and it's both winning. Rook d2 is also winning, threatening rook d1.
Check.
White
check.
Gave those checks here. Yeah, and now the problem is this rook d1 idea. White really has no way to defend. If you would play king e1 attacking this, you can simply take, and it's at the end this bishop is falling. Those rooks are just too terrible. So this is why white gave up the bishop and then grabbed the h-pawn. And okay, it's not a difficult technical task. Rook d7 and rook to c7. This is precise, getting rid of the rook, or threatening to get rid of the rook with rook h7. And this is why Nakamura played rook h8 and now
check.
Did go away with the rook, but now of course there's simply this pawn falling. And here Nakamura finally resigned. Yeah, certainly a disappointing finish for him, but he really overlooked two things. This e5 move, landing white into really big trouble, and then bishop c1 gave the game away for a second time. With king f2 you could still fight. It's not much fun, but you can fight on and maybe draw, but bishop c1 was losing instantly after rook a to b2. So yeah, good win for Aronian here, an important win, and he's on track, following Carlsen, who of course is very far away, but still a respectable tournament for Aronian, who also wasn't in so great shape lately, so a good result. Okay, so next game, let's pick Giri against Caruana. And this is really a game of two players who rather forgot this tournament, I think. Caruana, one of the, yeah, maybe despite Carlsen's successes, the player of the last year, really made huge strides forward, being the co-winner of this how it is called, the Masters final in Bilbao and yeah, in Sao Paulo and Bilbao, and getting his rating to close to 2,800. Okay, he plays Giri here, who didn't win a game yet in this tournament. So let's see what happens between those two tail-enders. Yeah, Caruana plays the so-called triangle setup with c6 and e6, and this invites a couple of very sharp lines. And in fact, Giri doesn't mind to allow this so-called Noteboom variation, named after Dutch player Daniel Noteboom. The idea of this line actually is, let's have a look. If white would this is wrong. I learned this earlier this week, but it's very hard to correct if you're used to do this. Okay, if white plays e3 now, then black responds b5 and really covers this pawn, and this leads to very sharp play. For example, bishop d2, a5 even. Takes, 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 takes. d3, bishop b7 takes. I'm just putting the main line on the board. And we have a very unbalanced situation where white's center is fighting against two outside pass pawns by black. It's a very, very enterprising opening for both sides actually, and very interesting to play. I played this a couple of times with black when I was younger and still being able to calculate some lines. Okay, return to the game. Giri in fact didn't go for one of the main lines. He just played g3, which is really a rare move, but it's pretty if you look at this, it's very similar to some Catalan setups where black grabbed a pawn and played bishop to b4, and it's certainly a playable setup. Knight f6, bishop g2, knight d7. I'm not completely sure about this move. I didn't look this up if there's some theory about all this, but my instant reaction at least would be to play c5 or play castles and c5 if possible, trying to develop the knight to c6 if possible. But okay, knight d7 is probably not a mistake. Would be strange really if this would be a mistake, but I think if you look at the continuation, queen c2, queen a5, maybe around here there's the spot where you need to improve, because black really quickly is in huge trouble. Knight to a2. Yeah, the bishop retreats. You don't want to give this bishop. And now white grabbed c4. And okay, of course, what black is doing now is wrong and leads to big trouble. But the whole setup here looks very passive to me. This thing against white, probably ready to occupy much more space. And the problem is not the setup itself, but you cannot really go e5, or maybe you could play e5 here. Yeah, this could be an improvement. But you need to do something here, because you're playing without your c8 bishop, while white has got all the pluses. What he did was really too cheeky. He played knight to b6, and this now gets black into huge trouble. Queen c2, and okay, here was the absolutely last point where he could try to improve. Maybe queen f5 is still a move. Just attacking the queen, so to say, and white would take. This isn't too great. Black has got good central control. Probably white would move the queen again. Queen b3 is just answered by this. Doesn't help, but you can just go back and introduce this return and e4. And here black maybe can play e5 at some point. And this is at least better than the game. In the game he grabbed on a4. And this leads to really disaster. Yeah, here Giri actually could have played better. Even he played knight e5, which leads to a huge position for white. But he had the alternative e4. And this seems to be even stronger. The idea is that well, e5 of course, not exactly very sophisticated, but this not only threatens a fork, but also takes away important squares for the queen, and the queen can easily get trapped here. Let's say black plays bishop c7, which is relatively the best move. Knight g5, threatening e5, and for example, if black would play h6 now, kicking the knight, then there's this, and now you see that this queen has really little space to move. Something like this could be the consequence, and this is just just gone for black. You lose the queen, get mated, or it's really over. So e4 was really strong. So h6 not working here. We can look at this defensive try, also giving the queen a square. Then e5, h6, b4, queen b6, something like this, just one line. And now the threat is d4, d5, and black has got a terrible position. He will simply get torn apart probably on the king side. White is still a pawn down, but look at this position. Yeah, really a big attack for white. What Giri played, a knight e5 also is very strong. It's just not that forceful in comparison. Knight b to d7. It's very hard to give black some advice. If you would take, you can take a look at this. Then white has this strong reply. He doesn't recapture on e5, but plays this first. And this is quite similar to a line that we looked at before. Again, this is over for black. Where do you go now? It leads to terrible positions like this. Just for example. Now attacking the rook, and if it moves, then a move like this wins the exchange or other forms of material. Black cannot move anything even. It's got this silly queen on h3 stranded. Terrible. Okay, so he cannot take, and this is why he went knight b to d7, knight c4. So Giri played it simple, but it's very strong. You've got this huge bishop. You've got this potential idea. Not at the moment it is covered, but it is in the position. Bishop f4, e4, e5. So white has a huge compensation really. e5, knight c3. What white likes to do is, of course, get this move in. Black took. Winning a tempo here, and e3. So idea is open up the center, and what should black do? Simply e takes d4 as a threat, and he decided to give away the pawn with d3. Yeah, white can simply take it. Retreat. Knight d5, and yeah, this more and more is approaching to a nightmare for Caruana. So white has got fantastic pieces. He decided to exchange, but it's really too late. This position is already winning for white. It's simply too much. Rook takes d5 is in fact a good and an interesting decision. Bishop takes d5 looks like the normal recapture, but this is just stronger. The rook actually has ideas to swing over to the king side. b6, and here bishop b2 is strong, just getting this bishop back into play, and having a look at the g7 pawn. a5, and yeah, of course here there's more than one way to win. I think Giri played a very static move with rook a4. In fact, you could also instantly win here with rook to h5. The point being, and this is maybe what he didn't see, but it's of course a bit of a computerish line. First, this threatens checkmate. If black would try to cover it in this fashion, then bishop d5 wins, and there's no way to defend against queen g6 or rook takes h6. Utilizing the spin. So let's say bishop to b7 just to put something on the board, then that this move threatening checkmate. If takes, then checkmate. This is made in one even. Rook h5. Probably he was put off by g6, but in fact white has a very attractive looking move against this, and this is the very visually pleasing move, queen to f5, a self fork. I don't see this too often, but it's winning. What can you do? It's simply rook takes h7, the threat, and you cannot take one of the pieces.
Checkmate.
One mate, and of course this is
checkmate,
a twin solution, so to say. So black cannot take one of those pieces, and rook takes h7 is simply deadly. You cannot prevent it. So some queen move here, and resigns. Just mate. So this wasn't spotted by Giri, but okay, it doesn't matter really. He played rook a4, and this is also very aesthetic, using all pieces in the attack and swinging this rook over also. So rook e8 played, rook g5, threatening on g7, only move. Bishop d5, threatening rook takes g6. So if black would play something like this, then rook takes
check.
g6 is the winner.
Check. Checkmate.
Like this. Of course, just to mention it, it is absolutely not advisable to take the exchange. Yeah, of course you need to checkmate here. If you would take it, just to put it on the board. It's not completely winning. I mean, white doesn't have any sacrifices. He's probably better, but just attacking and mating black is the thing to do here. Not grabbing small change in the corner, so to say. So this is just better, threatening this sacrifice. King to f8, and now rook f4, and this is really a picture of domination. All pieces attacking the king, and Caruana resigned. There's no defense at all. For example, let's say rook e7, then white can take here even, and this is over. Just this threat and no defense. Black would, if black plays, not if black would play. I'm sorry, I learned it at one day.
Check.
Then there's this check, and rook f7. No defense at all. Yeah, as mentioned, after rook f4, Caruana resigned, and he's really having a bad tournament. He lost to Nakamura the round before, and now got this spanking. Really a terrible loss. But nice for Giri. He won his first game, and I think it's really important to at least have a win in the back. Even if you don't have a great tournament, you really should have won a game. Alright, so I'm noticing that this will be a very long video, but well, who cares. Next game, Wang Hao against Carlsen. Wait, where is it? Here, Wang Hao against Carlsen. So Magnus on roll. Let's see what he's doing against the Chinese #1. Wang Hao playing e4. He's mixing his moves, and Carlsen also with is it a surprise? Well, he played e5 mostly in this tournament, but he plays all kinds of openings, so hard to tell what's really a surprise. Okay, bishop to b5, which avoids all kinds of open Sicilians. Carlsen, hard to predict what he would have played after d4. Maybe the Sveshnikov, not sure. Yeah, bishop b5 is a good alternative for white players looking to have a less sharp game, a more strategic kind of battle, and less theoretical play than in the open Sicilian. Black has some choices, e6, g6, d6, so all these small moves are good. He played e6, knight e7, which is one of the main setups, rook e1, and yeah, here black can also think of playing a6, which would force white's bishop either back or force the exchange, which would, I think, be okay for black, probably, to have this knight recapture. Of course, one issue is the development. White is much better developed. Black spent lots of time on moving the knights and a6, a6 and so on. It's an alternative though, a6. White mostly goes back to f1 though, and later occupies the center. Carlsen played knight g6 though, c3, and of course one feature of the Rossolimo variation, as it is called, is the later idea to occupy with the ideal center. And black, Carlsen immediately played to d5 himself. And I'm not sure, I didn't have the time to really study the opening in detail, but the way this is unfolding is really a bit problematic for black. Bishop e7, okay, he temporarily offers a pawn, which white didn't take, understandably so.
Check.
If you look at this,
Check.
just to put it on the board, something like this is probably quite okay for black. He's now better developed even, just needs to castle and has bishop c6, winning another tempo, and he's got two bishops, so nice position. Grabbing the pawn is really bad for white. So d4 is what he played, continuing to develop, and now castles, and white exchanged on d5. Yeah, black probably needs to take with the queen. If you take here, then yeah, maybe, I don't know, is this good? It looks tricky for black. He probably needs to take with the queen. I mean, he did this, he played this move. And but if you look at this now, that's knight e4 coming. Here Carlsen played queen all the way, first bishop e7, I'm sorry, queen c4, threatening knight to b6. And this was answered by queen to d8. And around here, I think it's clear that something went wrong for black. He's in some trouble now. Wang Hao took, and now played knight to d4. Here, a very interesting alternative was to go knight f2 e5, attacking e5, attacking the pawn on c6 from e5. A possible continuation would be something like this. If black sacrifices the pawn here, this even would be fine for black, attacking here, intending the pin. But white can go here and to play something like this, which looks much, yeah, is it much more comfortable for white? It looks good for white. This is a weak pawn, and black's got the two bishops, but they're not doing so much. It's hard to decide compared to the game what is better. If you look at the game, knight d4, c5.
Check.
Got this. Maybe here queen takes e7 was better, because here black doesn't really have a choice. He basically needs to exchange, otherwise the pawn is gone instantly. And this is really an uncomfortable endgame. It's the kind of endgame where you can easily imagine with Magnus being on the white side to see some 100 move torture. Bishop a6 controlling this square in front of the weak pawn. And this is of course the issue. This pawn is really weak. And this knight on a5, it's on the rim, but it's a really annoying piece, always with ideas like knight c6 or knight b3 attacking this pawn. And it's not easily driven away from a5. Bishop g5, rook e8. Yeah, probably black needs to do this. If you kind of don't really have a good square, something like this probably gets answered by c4, and the knight needs to go to squares where it doesn't really want to go. So rook e8 and rook d1 is logical with those kind of ideas. And now Magnus played h6, even forcing this this exchange. Okay, white took and played c4. c4, I think, was designed to prevent bishop to b5. So if white would have taken this chance to attack the bishop, then probably bishop to b5 was a good response. Even dropping this back to e8 if necessary. So oops, he played c4, preventing this. And yeah, what is black's problem here? Still this pawn. In lots of cases it can be a problem that this pawn is simply attacked at some point and it cannot be defended by the bishop, as it's of course simply on the other color. So this is a problem for black, this weakness. It's quite curious how this unfolded now. King f8, rook to d6, normal, I think, attacking this. But, black needed to play this, no choice at all. Rook e to d1, all normal. King to e8. Black needs to use the king also to defend the position. And here Wang Hao really played a very surprising move, and he probably has had miscalculated something. But still, it's hard for me to understand this, because you had simple continuation that really obviously keep your advantage and maybe increase it. I think a normal move, not the only one, but a normal move would have been something like f3 to allow the king to participate. And then you have various ideas. You can play very slowly, you can regroup this knight. It can be used on d3, for example, at some stage, or regroup to a4 where it attacks the pawn. Just various ideas to play. And the other idea, which is very direct but probably not bad, is to continue with a3 and b4, which simply tries to get a pass pawn on the queen side. And while white is doing all this, it's really unclear what black's play is. He doesn't really have much. This looks very, very tricky for black, and not at all easy to defend. Maybe possible, but very thankless task. What Wang Hao played actually was knight to c6, and yeah, the only reason why you would play this move is that it wins instantly, but in fact it doesn't, because you don't want to exchange really your advantage. The knight is simply the better piece in this static structure, and now Carlsen takes and gets counterplay immediately on the b pawn. And here we go, a5, very, very active, and this in fact is securing the draw immediately. And I'm not quite sure what Wang Hao calculated here, because, well, it is obvious. Knight c6, black hacks it off, plays rook b7, what else? a5, a4 draw. And maybe his mindset was so focused on playing a draw that he wasn't looking for more, but hard to understand. Maybe it's an idea to watch those short interviews that they do after the game. I didn't manage that yet, to learn what really was the idea that he had with knight c6. All right, a5, a4. Counterplay is on the way, and black easily exchanges pawns here and wins one pawn back at the end. Just needing to be precise. One more move. White now played h4, and there's really no big alternative. If white would take, then simply rook takes, and you don't have any way to defend both weaknesses. Black will win one pawn back and be absolutely fine. Well, in the game, h4 takes, and this is the last move that you need to see as black. If you would take here, then rook to c7 is really a problem. And white still has ideas, and maybe even this is playable, but it's completely unnecessary. Just this solves all problems. This move is a goner anyway, and white plays some move. Let's say here you just take then, and if white would now if white now occupies the 7th rank, then you can drop back, and it's simply nothing to play for. So a slightly lucky draw maybe for Carlsen here, who probably made some mistake in the opening. Somewhere here, I don't know. This loses lots of time. Queen d5, yeah, capture on c5, then back, and queen back, and this wasn't ideal, obviously, and leading to some trouble. He also had, if you look at the time, he was much down on the clock, so a bit of an opening accident. Okay, so I managed quite a couple of games, but we're not. We don't have them all. Lami against Harikrishna. Okay, I need to do this more quickly. This video is already very long. Okay, a Queen's Indian here. And Lami here plays the Petrosian variation. We had seen this before in this tournament by Anand against Kayin. And here a different line with taking on d5. White occupies a nice center, which is attacked immediately with c5. So this line in the Queen's Indian Petrosian is slightly similar to the Grunfeld. If you look at the structure, the only difference is that black usually doesn't fianchetto. In fact, here in the game we got the fianchetto. Very often bishop e7 is just played, but here it looks very Grunfeld-like. a4, castles. Yeah, and here in this position, in fact, Lami played a5. Of course, the logical follow-up after you played a4. But this initiates the upcoming pawn structure. And to be honest, I have a hard time understanding what is going on in this pawn structure. He just took it. And this means that black has got a pass pawn on the a file. White, of course, gets this pawn back. We can go forward a couple of moves. Yeah, black gave away the pawn. Wasn't possible to hold it anyway. And now a5. And so black has got this pass pawn. And still, what is this position? Is it equal? I'm really not sure how to assess this. I actually think that maybe black is rather comfortable here, because I don't really see what white is doing in this position. Black has the simple plan of pushing this pawn, and white doesn't really have a clear way to initiate counterplay here against the pawn. Simply because you've got this piece here, the queen, on the queen side, and you really would like to have this piece on some other square, maybe on the king side, trying to support a king side attack. or somewhere to support a breakthrough in the center. White really doesn't have much to play for, while black can push the pawn. And I'm not sure. What's clear is just a couple of moves later, white is in real danger, and I don't see how he could improve. He cannot really play d5. e5 also, it's not really possible. And how do you make any progress as white? It's really tricky. Yeah, black doesn't mind to exchange rooks. He's got the a-pawn.
Check.
Got all these exchanges. And it's clear that, of course, black is better now. He won the tempo here on the bishop. This is hanging and you've got the a-pawn. So something went wrong before for white. The question, though, is how bad is this really? White is certainly uncomfortable, but are you really in big trouble? Okay, he played bishop c2. If black would now decide to take on e4, you can take and get this back with no big problems for white. So still comfortable for black, but of course black's got something better. In the game he played knight b6, and it's certainly a good move. Alternatives: one is bishop to f8, threatening to take. And the question is, what should white do now? Still, you've got e4 hanging, so probably you need to move the queen. So let's say you move queen a2, then I can play this tricky move. White cannot take. I mean, he can take, but this leads to a distinct advantage for black. If you cannot take, what exactly do you play? Also to protect your e4 pawn. It's really a problem. So maybe this was a good bishop f8, but this is a real computer move. What Harikrishna played, I think, was really fine. It led to a good position for black all the way, but sorry. Queen a6. He just improved his piece position, introducing those ideas and pushing the pawn. Black is better, and he's better all the way, but at the end you see that it's hard to make any progress. So he probably had some improvement along the way, but I'm not sure at which point. Queens got exchanged. Bishop to b5. Yeah, the a-pawn is dangerous. All this looks perfectly logical. He's improved the bishop. This is a move now in the position. Yeah, it's certainly good for black, but is it winning? A couple of moves later,
check.
Around here, you're starting to ask yourself, yeah, how exactly are you going to make any progress if white just sits and waits? In the game,
check.
we see that white has repositioned his bishop on c4, and in this position he always attacks a2 and e6, and black therefore is tied down to this pawn, and it's probably here already a clear draw, as I don't see how black would be able to manage to even activate his king, and this is the only way to make any sort of progress, and because you're simply always tied down to e6 and a2, so maybe a2 wasn't really the way to go, but still, how do you get ahead here? King over, It's a long way, and you cannot go to b5. Yeah, you would need much more time to figure out if Harikrishna was able to win in this game. So in the game we had a couple of more moves. A slight change of the pawn structure.
Check, check.
Yeah, and here a draw was agreed. It's quite funny that the computer still thinks, even in the final position, that black has a very distinct advantage, but he just goes around in circles in the variation. He cannot show you any kind of progress. Black is just shuffling, and white is also shuffling. Just always bishop back and forth, and black always shuffles around here. It's just a draw, I think. But maybe someone is able to find something, probably before black went a2. Okay, I'm still not through all games. Leko against Wely. Let's do this also. And I think this is the last game for this round. Okay, and surprisingly, when Wely plays the dragon, I cannot remember him ever playing this opening. Okay, he played the dragon against Hou Yifan again with some transposition, I believe. I know this was the other way around, when Wely had even white. Sorry, I'm confusing something. Yeah, I'm not sure if he ever played the dragon, but okay. Leko, I think, always plays the main line here with f3, the rouser attack, and now long castles, which is also, I think, his favorite move. Bishop c4 being the main alternative. Bishop c4, which is even a bit sharper because it prevents the d65 move. And long castles, black is more or less forced to play d5. And after this, we often get the kind of position arising in the game, this kind of semi-end game. White can grab a pawn here, by the way, but it's not considered to be very good. I think bishop e6. I'm not. I don't know the theory here. Black is supposed to have good counterplay against the king on the white side, but the normal way to play this is knight a4. It's also more logical than grabbing, because you control c5. And, let's continue for a couple of moves. White occupies this nice post on c5. Knight f4. And queen to e3. Yeah, this is a fairly typical position for the line with long castles and d5, where white enjoys a very slight edge with a little play for black. This is really one of the lines that is a bit of a problem for the dragon play, at least psychologically, because you're simply defending a slightly worse position and you don't have the usual interesting tactically rich positions. Not exactly this position. I mean, this is just one possibility, but this kind of relatively dry position isn't very attractive for black to play. Of course, he's got alternatives. He can play e5, for example, in this position. Okay, but back to the game. Queen e3, knight f4, and knight to d5. So a good regrouping. The knight went to d5 and e6. Yeah, and I looked at the game at about this point, and I was really rather confident that this should end in a draw, actually, because I thought on a very abstract level, well, how is white going to make any progress against this great knight on d5? The only way it looks like is at some point to play c4, and c4 is really such a terrible looking move, like killing your bishop. It needs to be under very, very special circumstances that c4 is a good move. And how do you make progress? In fact, I thought the only way would be with queens off to get a rook to c5, and this happened in the game. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, black threatened a4, so white needed to prevent it. And queen's off. And now white tries exactly what I was just saying, getting a rook to c5 to attack the pawn and this pawn. So we can just advance a couple of moves. Yeah, some strengthening moves on both sides, and still it looks very difficult for white to make any real progress as long as this knight is keeping the position together. In fact, the only way is to simply take it at some point, and this is what Leko did a couple of moves later. He did the utmost in preparation and then took it, waiting to move 31 incidentally, 41 when you have more time on the clock. Takes and c4. This was the idea. Pressurizing d5, and black needed to take. So okay, how to assess this position? Of course, white is better, there's no doubt about that. But should black be able to hold it? Probably yes. It's not much fun, but it should be possible. White's advantage is because of his better rook mobility. The rook is attacking a5. This can be increased, this pressure, and he's got the potentially better king supporting a later, maybe a coming pass pawn on the queen side. It's not great for black, but he's got defensive resources, of course. In the game, in fact, when Wely was had some ways to improve, but yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah, rook b5. Of course, cannot exchange now. This would be a grave mistake, giving white the decisive pass pawn, so black just stays. We've got those typical improving moves. Yeah, f6 takes away those squares but weakens the pawns. Not so sure about this move. But okay, there are clear improvements later, but black is in a position of suffering all the time, this is clear. But he could, I think, defend much better. Rook g8,
check.
Rook to g6, Rook b6, yeah, attacking the b pawn. Now white grabbed on g6, takes. Yeah, and here I think black simply needed to take on g3. I think he very much likely could have defended better before, yeah. But maybe this was the last chance, but it's already critical. Yeah, I think rook takes g3. For example, rook takes e6, rook to a3, king f5, rook takes, king g5, king d7, something like this. It's probably lost also. Yeah, the f pawn. Yeah, in my notes I had this as a possible improvement, but now looking at this, what is black doing against the f pawn? It's maybe already too late, yeah. It's already maybe too late. f6, I'm not sure about this move. It's really weakening. And I don't see really what white was threatening. Okay, yeah, well, in the game we had king to d7. And white is simply mopping up the pawns and has got 2 extra pawns now. And those 2 flank pawns are too dangerous.
Check.
And white can also easily coordinate now with rook to g5. This is nicely protected. It stops any kinds of pawn moves. It protects a5. And of course the h pawn is free to go.
Check. Check.
Yeah, here it is. just covering the square.
Check.
And again, the h-pawn can move. Rook h1. And now we see the point of all this. Now the a-pawn is the deciding factor, with white having the rook behind the pass pawn, which is of course the ideal scenario. And here black resigned. It's simply that black has no way to prevent the invasion. King back. Rook a6, it doesn't matter really. Black can only sit and wait. With the rook behind the pass pawn, you can never move the rook, and white will simply grab the pawn at some point. It's also not helping if black does something like this. You just need to be patient in your maneuvers. At some point you will get this with check or with the king. So it's completely lost with the rook behind the a-pawn. Okay, a technical win at the end for Leko, and probably around here there needs to be some improvement for black to save this game. But I didn't have the time to look deeply into this, and this video already is has got motion picture length, 96 minutes, unbelievable. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed it if you're still awake after 90 minutes, and I'll be back also of course on Saturday and Sunday to give you the games of the last 2 rounds. Alright, till then, bye.